This is how I broke Civilization 6 harder than the children in my basement. The average game of Civ 6 takes 5 to 10 hours as players process agonizing decisions. But with the power of 3,000 hours under my belt and a near lethal dose of Columbia's finest coursing through my veins, I beat every Civ 6 victory type in just 5 hours without any exploits. How did I win a religious victory without religious units? Can I dominate the planet before the Renaissance? Well, smash that like button like my heart rate after the fentanyl threshold is crossed, and sit back as you watch a schizophrenic bareback Civilization 6. The first victory in line, spanking deity like the good little girl she is. But what are the settings for this soon-to-be R-rated video? 4 civs to limit my social anxiety, choosing nothing but the finest wet noodles to oppose me. And without the services of the Ted Bundy of Civ, I will have to make do with the Bill Cosby, whose 3 key factors give me the keys to turn this early game into the perfect place to set up the late-stage abortion device for every other Civ. Here's how. The first factor is to scour the premises for any civilization that speaks a slightly different language to ours, making the oncoming genocide acceptable, settling on a perfect mine for our child soldiers to work their second shifts, as my consideration for these children's well-being is blessed by God himself with silk texts, before we meet a new civilization on the horizon. With our first victim met, and our top attorneys searching for loopholes in the Geneva Suggestions as we speak, it's time to find God before somebody else does, as my strategy relies solely on a religion. I am forced to raw dog astrology only to find the natural wonder the turn after, all but confirming God doesn't in fact agree with my plans for genocide. I set down the holy site anyways and go Divine Spark to guarantee my trump card. But before I can gain 60 great profit points, the third factor reveals itself early. Unlike most domination games where the adamant refusal of your cavalry to get down and work the battering ram makes them all but useless, this game, they are the battering rams thanks to Basil's abilities. And while my lawyers lobby against animal cruelty laws, we search for our needed resource. But these horses are useless without a religion, so how do I guarantee one? That's where the child laborers come in, trading away our valuable gems for the funds to buy the loyalty of the first great prophet. But why do I want a religion? Is work ethic really that strong? No, but Crusade and its 10 combat strength in enemy cities following your religion is. With my 3 cities going to work and the Netherlands doing my job for me, it was now time to launch our first assault. But with no faith for missionaries, how do I put the Dutch in missionary? Well, you see, Byzantium's unique ability allows you to ethnically cleanse anyone who isn't following your religion, giving you the eventual majority of a depopulated city. And that's where Crusade can take full effect. But the Dutch were expecting this as they garrison the city and will defend it to the last man. So how do we proceed? By putting everyone down to the last man 6 feet under, as their army of prehistoric tribesmen were no match for the power of my crusaders. But it was the archers who stole the show. In a normal game, the archers would be getting their tushies 2-tapped by every unit in the game, but thanks to Crusade, they low-diff warriors, allowing me to place them in an optimal position about 10 feet away from their targets, and with my horsemen causing enemies to stop, drop, and roll into mass graves, their forces are routed. As I sit and spend a few turns soaking in the scenery and damage, you might be asking, why don't I just take the city? The problem was her other cities were too far away from her forward settlement to convert, so I was using it as bait to convince her to funnel more of her non-Orthodox population to get baptized by some holy water, or baptized by this 40. It only took a few turns of beating on the mentally challenged before I was able to convert her other city, causing Zhao to drop his rectal penetration device at the sheer horror from the realization there was no hope for anyone who stood against my army. Let me show you why. They think they can beat us without Crusade? My horsemen use and abuse their dead bodies as sock puppets, call them necromancers. More advanced units? Well, their armor may better protect them against blows, but the sheer aura of my naked berserkers has them on their knees gulping gravy in no time. Truly, who could stop my implied consent squadron after securing the city of What do you mean they have a pikeman? I had to pay her to make peace. My army may not have been unstoppable after all. I needed something to counteract their pike ditty from signing my young sensations to his label. And I have just the thing, but it will require a revitalization of my economy suffering from a similar GDP to Skid Row before round 2. And while the city of Encaira prepares for its Portuguese invasion, I finally obtain my trump card. The next of Basil's leader abilities, the Hippodrome, gives me the answers we seek. The Tagma. But I didn't just go monarchy for Tagmas. I have a plan, and that requires the worst tier 2 government, monarchy. I needed this terrible government for one reason, one building to be more specific, the Grand Master's Chapel, allowing me to pay units in abstract faith instead of cold hard cash. And with that, 2 advanced Tagmas whose aura immediately wets the panties of nearby units were at Wilhelmina's borders. As it was finally time to invade for round 2. All tension was lost as I hit the city of Harlem harder than crack did in the 80s. And just like the CIA, I immediately destroy the city within a single turn. But this victory was short-lived as I ran into my first stumbling block. Rotterdam was Catholic, and this slightly different Christian denomination is a big no-no for brothers of the faith such as ourselves. We were crusaders, and this entire continent was Jerusalem. So naturally, I massacred all the Catholic inhabitants. And while I was waiting for the one unit I needed to convert Amsterdam to show itself, I realized something. She has no walls, and I just wasted 3 turns and 1 minute of my time waiting. I send in my forces as even without Crusade, I still hit hard enough to cause brain damage, except for the fact there were no brains left to damage. And with the Netherlands dealt with, a new army was being gathered with all the faith I had, with even the great General El Cid answering the call to arms. And it was time for him to El sit on Zhao's fat ass. And like a 1940s Frenchman, I blinked and the first city changed hands. And while Ponto Delgado was heavily defended on all sides by multiple crossbowmen, it is generally difficult to defend a city in Civ 6 when you're not given the chance to take your turn. But before I could move on to Evora, it was a chokehold, and leaving the enemy at my exposed backside would be unwise. In most circumstances, international law would mandate that I take them prisoner, but the Geneva Conventions are merely suggestions if you treat them like Apple's terms of service. As their units are stuck filleting the long shaft of my Tagmas, I meet my final enemy who will like me for all of 2 turns before the denouncement. And with the 30 minutes gone and Lisbon in my sights, the game is almost at its climax. And with that, all we have to deal with is their walls. It was time for Portugal's last stand. Lisbon is strong, but after converting them to our religion, well, this is gonna take a while. I need more forces, but the reinforcements were stuck in the crusadeless city of Coimbra, which required an apostle before we could tear down their walls with our lobotomized horses, headbutting their defenses. But as I was looking at the ruins of Coimbra, the strategy to defeat Lisbon revealed itself to me right then and there. And that strategy was suicidal charges against the walls of their capital until somebody could get through. And after enough casualties to make Stalingrad look like a minor skirmish, we take the second capital of the game. But while my forces moved to mop up Portugal, disaster struck. They launched their last-ditch invasion with their elite units and our arch nemesis. It was a good effort considering the circumstances. The same couldn't be said for their final 4 cities, which lasted about as long as the Confederacy, opening the path to our last and biggest challenge. But Sweden was by far our strongest opponent yet, thanks to one miscalculation I made. While normally the Karelians are weak units, in this instant what was their weakness turned into their strength. Their anti-cav properties. While normally pikes are no match for our heavy Tagmas, it was a different story when those pikes were armed with shotguns. But worst of all, the reason this entire war would be impossible was the fact that she had her own religion. But you know what they say, quantity is a quality on its own, and a few blitzkrieg casualties proves my point with the subsequent power of crusades, making the city of Karl an even fight. And we lucked out with their Carolines in the encampment. All we have to do is eliminate the city and cost them an elite unit. And I take it down to 1 health. After surviving her counterattacking Caroleans' backshots from Afghanistan, I needed to find a way to counterattack, and this problem spelled opportunity. You know what they say, better to be a sexual predator than sexual prey, so I move in to kill a man-at-arms in Carolean, hopefully converting their capital to make the last city I need easier to take. And after eliminating her units, it doesn't. I started getting desperate, looking around to find my saving grace, and I found it in this trebuchet, but it still wouldn't convert. This situation was looking dire as I needed to find a way to convert that city, and my regular plan of ethnic cleansing wasn't working. But before I tell the men to pick up the horse when the man in front of them dies, I realize something. I can make cores. Their increased strength through military restructuring is just the thing I need. Wait a minute. They didn't have walls this entire time? I wasted 5 minutes without even needing crusade, and as is a theme for this game, Stockholm survived at about 10 health before winning the domination victory in 46 minutes and 8 seconds. And now for the religious game, the most arduous of all my challenges. It took me days to finally come up with a winning strategy, mainly because of the immense amount of time spent micromanaging those lightning sorcerers. And while I could have just placed one other civ on a dual map to convert them, I would rather pass glacier-sized kidney stones than engage in PAB activities, a class 1 mental health disorder. But I finally figured out how to do it, and do it in speed, and it all centers around Dido. Like in the last game, there is a process, but it's 4 steps instead of 3. I won't yank your chain on the first one. You need a religion for a religious victory. So I settled Tyre on the coast, research astrology for the holy site, which will grant us our great prophet, and after completing that, we spam holy site prayers to secure our religion until the greatest thing happens. We get the bones of the Magi. Now, I don't know who or what Magi or its sexual orientations are, but I will be using this bone to bone every other leader in the game when I get my golden age. All the luck going our way can only be attributed to one thing: the divine power of Jadwiga's thighs. Ever since I was a young man and saw those thighs, I knew being gay would be a challenge, and to this day, it's a battle I'm losing. But what beliefs do we require for a religion such as this? Choral music seems bog standard for your average religious game of knocking on the AI's doors, spreading the good word of Jadwiga's thighs. But that is only filler. The real belief we need is religious colonization. It's time to replace the natives on the island with Civ Thyers, but first there is another district we need. And to do that, I buy a builder. You see, this builder is imperative, as after working 2 sea resources, the expensive celestial navigation tech is boosted, giving us our unique Kothon district, which provides a boost to building settlers. But we're not done with the sweet melancholy of the sea just yet, as building the unique Byreme unit gives us 6 era score for a very important golden age, the 3rd key to this game. That golden age allows us to use our faith output to buy settlers with monumentality, but before we reveal the 4th key, where am I going to settle? So many locations to forcibly evict natives from, but the answer to my decision should be obvious to my fellow 4X virgins. The nearest possible location. Settling our 2nd city 5 minutes in and left wondering where the first civ is as I gear up for the 4th key. What's that? You blinked? Well, we are already 4 settlers in as I realize that I messed up. I don't have the population for our 4th key, the government plaza, but like Anthony Edwards, I am creative and persistent when it comes to rectifying my mistakes. I build a granary, quickly increasing my population while all my gold was spent on another builder to chop in a lighthouse. The last step was to research bronze working to chop out Amazonian natives before forcibly resettling them to our capital, getting the city up to the required population to build the government plaza and subsequently the ancestral hall, giving us another 50% boost to settlers. And with the completion of our 4-turn plan, my cities are full of billionaires, cause all my citizens do is get bread. As we finally make contact with another empire 9 minutes in, and she, like the others, are on another continent. And with almost 7 cities in just 10 minutes, all of which following my religion from the start, it's time to reveal my strategy. I am going to outpopulate my way to a religious victory by selling all my cities which spawn with a religion in place to other civs because of the one victory type that is easily cheesed. A civilization counts as converted when over 50% of their cities follow your religion. While we quadrupled our cities in just 5 minutes, we don't even know how many we need, meaning we'll have to completely eliminate the natives just in case. But there is a problem to that plan. No golden age means no monumentality, limiting settler purchasing abilities. And with the medieval era ending in 9 turns, I realize at the 15-minute mark it's time to go. Settling cities and improving damaged tiles shockingly makes people like you more and makes your empire more prosperous. But my problem was the dedication for the normal age being the science one, and with no science districts, I need to be creative. And I immediately know what I have to do when I earn my first Great Admiral. And so I patronage another and decide it's high time to suzerain Cahokia. Wait. I already suzerained them before. That means I don't get error score. A miscalculation that costs us a second opportunity to use monumentality for the rest of the game. But despite that setback, we might still have a chance. And it all depends on how many cities I need to settle. So let's find out what that number is. The first nation, Korea, has about 6, so multiplying 7 by 5 means I need about 35 cities to win. Right now I have about half of that. That's achievable. Let's see if the average holds out. Japan has 6. America again has 6. This might be... Eleanor has 10. Well, if Christina has any more than 2, things are going to get tricky, especially since I neglected all my other yields. And Christina has 3. More than 2, but that's good enough for me. I realize that I can outproduce everyone, and it's time to cook. My metastasis was nothing short of cancerific. If this continent was a brain, I'd have Einstein in the Hawking chair within 24 hours. But at 30 minutes in, I realized something. I might not have enough cities. My plan might need to change. And that opportunity for change revealed itself with the Japanese. You see, Japan is used to seeing the sun up close, so the blinding light of Yadwiga's thighs could surely be handled. The only problem? Well, the isolationist Japan doesn't like my spreading the gospel, and I understand, of course. Power like this might be too much for even the resistant Japanese to handle, but there was something they hadn't accounted for. They couldn't engage my apostles over water, and with this foolproof strategy, I was able to convert 4 of Japan's cities. And so, with only 4 other civs to be converted, I traded away all my cities. But did I really calculate this right? Taking time to learn how many cities I needed even with the time constraint, as one mistake could be catastrophic. As I couldn't afford another they don't have walls situation. And I was sure I had the right numbers, trading away my cities as I won the game. Why haven't I won? Did I miscalculate? No, as even the victory tab shows everyone converted. Well, it seems my brilliant strategy was too smart for even the Civ 6 AI to handle. More specifically, this strategy was smarter than at least a first grader. So despite the anticlimactic ending, we won with 43 minutes and 50 seconds on the clock. It was now time for the diplomatic victory, but what settings will I use? You see, Diplo is the longest victory type. You literally cannot win or cheese the game until turn 300. Fortunately, I have found a way to optimize this experience, turning on Apocalypse mode for a surprise tool that will help us later, and as for my chosen civ, the answer is obviously Kupe. But as you'll soon see, I made a terrible mistake. We spawn in with Kupe, who just finished emerging from the ocean after evolving past his need for gills. But what is the strategy here? Well, in this 2-step process, we first send our warrior to explore for future allies and city-states to obtain Diplo favor. But for the settler, well, he gets some sleep. And as my settler naps and I furiously mash next turn, I'll explain the 3 reasons behind this strategy. The first is obvious. With no cities to build up or think about, I can hit next turn as fast as possible. But the second reason, Kupe's pre-settle abilities gives you culture even without a city, allowing us to eventually gain allies and government for Diplo favor. But the third reason might be just as important. Without a city, no one will declare a war on you, as it is very difficult to win a war when you don't know where the enemy is. The only reason I do end up moving him is to meet the first leader, Basil, because I need to meet as many civs as possible. The reasoning is simple. I need to gain alliances and city-states to begin accumulating diplomatic favor, which can then be used to force my proposals through in the World Congress. After shockingly ending up in a dark age, let's quickly talk about everything I did for all 40 turns of this era. I meet my first friend, Chandragupta, witness some ethnic cleansing, and send Amani to establish an alliance with Kagwana. This alliance will be pivotal for my economy later on, but for now, that's everything that happened. Yeah, this game has been so exhilarating, I can barely contain myself. In the medieval era, we can finally work on our economy by trading for open borders, gaining some semblance of gold production to be used later for a very important reason. And after hundreds of turns, our society finally develops enough to enable a tier 2 government guaranteeing us 1 Diplo favor per turn. But which government is best suited for this strategy? Well, you'll be surprised to find that I chose autocracy, not because it's important, but because I can abuse the power this gives me over my subjects. And with the early game set up, it was time for the actual content to happen in earnest in our first diplomatic congress, and I can gain a maximum of 2 Diplo victory points. And after careful deliberation, I set my voting and I only gain 1. This might take a while. Now, the question you might be asking is why I settled my capital, as I'm now open to an attack. My strategy is simple. Gain the Desert Folklore Pantheon because I thought it was funny, and also I'm bored, and did this for the sake of my mental health. Not from depression, but from the sake of protecting my brain from this 40 that's calling my name like the Green Goblin mask. But what about the other civs invading you, I hear you ask? Well, I'm betting on the fact no one wants the bumfuck of nowhere in the middle of the Arctic as a settling outpost. And after another successful World Congress, it might not seem like we've made much progress in 10 turns, but I have 12 Diplo favor and 3 diplomatic victory points. Okay, how do I speed this up? Well, by preparing money for the oncoming emergencies, but how do I get that? Through Kagwana. They have iron, and like any good major power to their puppet, I exploit their resources and trade it for profit, building a stockpile for my corrupt Snow Empire. And after another successful World Congress, it's time I show why I have Apocalypse mode on. As you may have noticed, the other leaders are not historically known for upholding the laws of the hog. With such low competition, I am betting that my meager reserves should be enough to win this disaster emergency, giving me 2 Diplo victory points and up to 150 Diplo favor. But in the 4th World Congress, something changes. You can gain up to 4 diplomatic victory points at once. And what will I do? I will vote for Alex to be world leader. The reason is simple. Everyone votes for themselves, so I have to spend a large amount of favor to get my 2 points. But by voting for whoever has the largest Diplo favor in the top left, I am free to spend most of my votes on the other proposals, guaranteeing 3 points instead of gambling and potentially only getting 2. And then I did something puzzling. The aid request is over when I didn't even bother with it. Why would I give up 2 Diplo victory points? Well, that's due to my special ability, Infinite Retardation. At least I'm keeping the World's Fair close enough to make up for it. With the main gameplay loop established, let's skip ahead to where the fun actually starts. Ahead to where my plan is finally paying dividends. Cyrus has an aid emergency, and he is at war with at least 3 of the members. How did this turn of events happen? Hey, I know we're massacring the Persians, but let's send the money to repair their economy. I give 200 gold last second, predictably winning this emergency for 2 free points. And now with my nation of Eskimos at 15 Diplo victory points, this is where my true genius shines. Everyone will always vote for me to lose 2 points, which normally necessitates the Statue of Liberty, but well, it took us 100 turns to build just 2 districts. So how do I break past this threshold? And just as I'm about to answer that question, the screen goes red, and this is where I realized my mistake. Comets take about an average work week in the Congo to land, and considering how late in the game it is, turns are taking another 30 seconds. This is... you know what, fuck it, I'm cutting out the dead time. After getting predictably no medals in the World Games, we will have to somehow go positive in this session. Everyone will vote against me so I can get the other 2 sessions, but the problem is if I lose 2 victory points and gain 2 victory points, we'll just be treading water permanently. The solution? I will vote against myself. Why? When I vote for myself, I technically win a Congress proposal, and so while I do get -2, I then get +1 for winning that proposal, overall gaining +1 diplomatic victory points per Congress. But just gaining 1 each World Congress session is going to take too long with the fact that I have to wait 20 30-second turns between each session. But then an opportunity arose. Well, 2 actually. The first was Basil's emergency, where I can throw all my gold at and guarantee a win, but the second seems like it should be easy. For my current situation, the climate accords. And with it being the information age, we can guarantee everyone is in that age is, well, you know, I'm holding down the average since I'm still in the medieval era. And so surely they're all producing some sort of power in CO2, right? Well, no, somehow 2 other civs are living without power in the space age. And so at 18 points after winning the aid request, I just need to get gold, but Basil is keeping it close. And at the end, he succeeded. But so did I, winning the game in 33 minutes, edited down to 27:20 due to time lost. But now after this long journey is finally over, it's time to add up all the scores. Did we win in time? The culture victory, an hour 43 due to a catastrophic game. Science was nearly perfect with an hour 27. Domination, about 46 minutes, around the time I needed. Religious, well, usually it would take over an hour, but I got it in 44 minutes thanks to my unorthodox strategy. And finally Diplo, 27 minutes in one of the most grueling victory types ever imagined. And tallying up the score, I get 5 hours and 9 minutes.
I lost.
To watch a challenge I actually succeeded in, check out this video where I conquer every leader in the game as Macedon.